And we're back.
Hello, please take a seat. Can I
Good
get you something to
afternoon,
drink?
or whatever time it is,
Go
everyone.
on, take a seat.
I do believe our guests receive their sustenance from more arcane water.
Very secret world mode.
Don't mean I don't drink ale, do it?
Yeah, the stag guy
It's
is
in
in
the
love
house
with
for
her.
as long as it
Yeah,
lasts.
I
Please
think you
forgive Mr.
find love
Staghead.
poetry
He's not
from
in the
him
best
to
of
her
moods, poor
in
thing.
one of the
Having
side
lost
quests later.
home and hearth.
Home, hearth, my kingdom, the forest. All of it succumbed to parasites, to filth. Our world is coming apart at the seams.
I know, right?
The end is folding in on us.
No more drink for you, sweet. You only get melancholy, and we don't need that now. Not when you're about to help me with the ad.
Her skin radiant, pure and white as winter's dawn over
Laying it on
Arcadia
thick there,
moss.
dude.
Yeah.
She is Eve, born of the earth, not of man. Plump as a ripe apple, fruitful and fertile.
Plump? Fertile? Oh, thanks very much. That'll just scare men off,
Yeah.
sweet. He's trying. It's a distraction for him. For me too, in lieu of better and brighter days. I'd like to get out someday. Even if I could leave right now, I wouldn't. He's kind. They need us. To believe. To remember. To fight. This is all they have. These fields and forests and mountains. They've nowhere else to go. The world out there is not for them.
Here will soon be no more. My people are abandoning our sacred lands, leaving only the dead to go to Earth and the disease to spread. The power of the forest is on the wane, and a shadow falls over us all.
This has always been a
He's really a downer.
special
I mean, he has
place.
reason to be a
Place
downer.
of strong magic. I've run with fairies since I could run. The forest people protected us as long as we left their lands alone. It was the law. The Strigoi, the bloodsuckers, they don't respect the law.
There is a dark and infinitely malevolent force behind this siege. It is a ruse concealing some fearful machinery restarted. It brings forth memories of dark times befalling us countless seasons ago, and
Foreshadowing.
against it last night. The dragon, the eagle, the owl.
Oh, I've heard this story also from my mom. She used to sing a beautiful song. La 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 la.
Jesus.
I'm afraid I wouldn't know how to sing it in English. On karaoke night, I just listen. Everyone's okay with that.
The forces of darkness are stronger than ever, and those who stand against them are weakened by centuries and forgetfulness, bitterness, and the embrace of the grave. No matter how many of you there are, with your modern magic and your steel weapons, you cannot defeat this evil. Not without their help.
The owl, the eagle, and the dragon? The dragons died a long time ago. Eagles, there are plenty of up in the mountains, but none here.
Well, actually,
Owls,
technically
though,
correct.
I've seen owls. There's one in particular I see often in the village. He hoots at me. I think it's a friendly owl. So, what do you have so far? Her bosom soft as... Oh, sweet. There's just no way I'm filling your mug again.
Gee. Poor guy.
Now, the reason I started at this cutscene is essentially I wanted to get some crap out of my inventory, and this is the first store, but it entered a story cutscene the moment I got in here. So, give me a quick sec to get rid of some shit.
Yeah, I'll figure something to talk about. Like after Egypt, after running out of things to talk about in an area that wasn't my specialty in the first place, I underwent choice paralysis. I got less research done than I was expecting. So I don't know. I'm gonna be like,
Look, just let's start with the
randomly-
basics. Let's talk about vampires.
okay, so yeah, we talked. Wow, didn't we already talk about vampires in the first video of how many videos? And when was this again?
Last year sometime.
Maybe if it was that recently. God. Okay. So okay. Long story short, just about every culture has a myth. Has a restless dead myth or a vengeful dead myth, and that myth usually has a few specific elements.
Is this not what you signed up for? To play a part in a
Yeah.
medieval siege, like in old history? The villagers say the walls of Harba Boreshti held against the Golden Horde, the Templars, the Soviets. A peaceful resistance. A nice idea.
Is she
Between you and I, that
Council
won't
of
work
Venice?
again. In siege, the attackers
No, I
starve
think
out
she's
the
an independent.
defenders. Is it not true? Here, the attackers are starving. The blood hunger drives them, hard and strong. They
Yeah, I
will
think she's
not
just an
stop.
independent vampire hunter.
A single vampire killed 30 people in Cluj-Napoca, where I come from. One night, one vampire. It now sleeps under a churchyard with an iron spike through its skull. We do not have enough soil in the churchyard or iron in the houses to seal all of these away. I've done the math. Look how the ghouls are gathering for the feast, sniffing out the dead and the abandoned. Yet, the walls still hold. Some old saint of miracle smiles down on this village for us to have made it this far. I should like to drink to his health.
I like her completely impractical backpack sheath.
Yeah, whatever it is, it well, it looks cool at the very least.
I think it was actually in the movie Blade.
that actually sounds. That's. I'm happy to hear that. It makes me happy. Like, okay, so anyway, dead people.
Are ghouls a subset of this restless dead archetype?
Yes, pretty much. They're pretty much the Middle Eastern version of it. Like, because, well, actually, not kind of. Okay, the thing about the Restless Dead myth is that it almost always focuses on a community. Like, modern vampires often have, they have a lot of cultural baggage that's completely unrelated to, like, what we, like, this doesn't have anything to do with this because we've forgotten it. But usually these myths have somebody in a community is either vengeful and has some kind of grudge against people living there, or they're just assholes, or they suffered something really tragic and could not move on even after dying. And after that, they then come back to life and try and get their vengeance upon people in the community. Try and kill them, hunt them down. And you see this, like, the original, both, funny thing is, both werewolves and vampires come from different versions of this myth in the same region. Like, werewolves are a little bit further south, and vampires are from, like, Transylvania-ish. But, like, both are, and I do want to clarify, sometimes dying isn't literal here. Sometimes these are, like, people who are, like, just super put out in the village, and the boundary blurs between traditional perceptions of being a witch and being some member of the Walking Dead or something. You get, like, there's one Southeast Asian, like, Filipino and Malaysian vampire where there's a woman who has a grudge against the living, and what she does, she lives as a normal villager in the daytime, and in the nighttime she lifts her head and entire internal infrastructure off of her body, and she goes around and she sticks her intestines in pregnant women to drink up the fetus. And it's pretty gnarly, and there's a lot of wild shit out there that's like that. And in traditional English culture, if you've ever heard the word revenant, that's what that word comes from. That is basically a walking corpse who comes to avenge themselves on living people in whatever area we're talking about. Just like in the village or in the town, and hunting down people it hates. And in the US, or really in the modern Western world, that's what a ghost is. That's what, like, the ghost story ghost is. It fills the same function. It's associated with a place, it's associated with people, and with a specific event, rather than something abstract or something that has agency in and of itself, like the sort of vampires or werewolves you see in modern fiction. And it's focused on vengeance, it's focused on the living, and on attacking the living, and usually there's some special procedure you can do to make it go away. And in Christian areas, it's very often attached to iron, which is an old European thing that predates Christianity, because iron's kind of a miracle substance, and it has a lot of sort of weird folkloric associations. You know, like how... Let me put it this way. You know how pop culture is kind of weird about modern technology and magic, and that it doesn't... Like, this game is a really good example of them intersecting, and they're often portrayed as being at odds. That's...
Yeah, I'm familiar with the weirdness of just the perception that modern technology and magic don't mix, which is something in fiction I don't particularly like. I find it very silly.
I don't either, but that's why that when you at the bottom of it, that is why iron is strong, like inters fairies or kills vampires, or like is supposed to hold iron, whatever that means. Nobody actually knows what it means. It's supposed to force off like supernatural things, because iron was just recently discovered and made just a big enough impact on society that the marks of that stage of technological development are still within, they still live in Western cultures. So we still remember, in a very vague way, that iron is new and iron is mundane, and iron is mundane but incredibly powerful, and in ways that just don't necessarily gel well with traditional views of the world. And it's probably why iron has all those associations with, like, fighting off the supernatural, because that the process, that the transition from bronze to iron was a big, abrupt enough, important enough that still the marks it left on European culture are still around. So, fun fact for that, like, you'll find other ways, like dispelling the vengeful dead, all over the place, and a lot of them have something to do with
like they mentioned an iron spike through its skull in a churchyard, which is the intersection of both Christian mythology and, I guess, Indo-European myth about iron.
Yeah, the old iron, like, sort of, yeah, I don't think there's a good way to shorten that phrase, but yeah, pretty much. And ultimately, a lot of the ways that you're supposed to drive off supernatural beings and cultures around the world boil down to purity, excuse me. And
yes, that's why virginity is so important in magical traditions.
Well, it's less important than people think, but sometimes it is, but that's a complicated
I just know the unicorn thing and several magical traditions, which may be modern or not, call for virgin's blood.
Yeah, that's the virgin's blood thing. That's myth. Like, and not like, actual myth, but like myth making about witches.
I didn't know.
Yeah, like virginity has been very important in cultures around the world, but Christianity's focus on virginity as a religious thing is
because of the Virgin Mary,
in large part because of the Virgin Mary, in large part because Christianity and monotheist, like Abrahamic religions, have a thing around sexual purity and sexual abstinence as well. That
Which
They
is
don't have
interesting
vision
to
for a
view
world after the
as it
war.
replaced the Roman and Greek
They
tradition
only
of
want to feed on
bacchanalia,
us until there's
I mean,
of
nothing left.
sexual
Then let them
liberty,
try.
relative
They
sexual
will find no
libertinism.
nourishment in
yeah,
my
well,
veins,
I
only
mean, honestly,
pain and
Romans
death.
were bigger prudes than the Christians
Every
that follow
part
them.
of me is the opposite of them,
The thing
and I am
is
poison to their
the
kind.
religious element to that
The
virginity
forest
is
is
what
my
is
body.
what made the difference. Is what
The
was
trees,
different
my
there.
arms, twigs
And,
and branches,
like-
my fingers.
Oh,
So-
so it was
touch
I
the
don't
earth.
know what to call it, a civic,
A
And I
secular.
read them as a bat
a
reads
a
them.
secular tradition of
The vampires
sexual
are
restraint
tearing
rather
away
than a
my
religious
senses
one.
by one.
And it sort of it was.
But they can still
Let me put it
be
this way: at least
restored.
in ancient Rome,
Regrown.
there was no sharp divide
through
between
them I
civic
can see
and the
past the
religious.
scorched
You
earth.
were the gods were
bring the
everywhere,
battle to our
and
end.
they were watching you pee, and they were
He's
making sure that
talking
you
about
weren't misbehaving and would
protecting
punish you
magic
if you
trees.
were. But
Your
like,
command of language never
the-
ceases
Well,
to
how is that
amaze
different
me.
from the Abrahamic tradition
Why
of
we're
God?
such a good
because it's
team,
personal.
sweet.
God is. He's not just watching your family or your clan, your gens or something. He is watching your soul and judging it. And it's virginity, not even virginity necessarily, but like, just it was important because you were violating social norms and because you were threatening the position of the family and threatening social stability. In Christianity, there's a distinct religious and personal significance to sexual behavior that just is not present.
So you're saying it's less a communal thing and more a individual, personal thing?
Yeah, and it's
Okay,
yes,
that's interesting.
and
I
as
mean-
well as and as well as a spiritual thing. Like this is something being abstinent is the sort of thing that's supposed to get you into, like, maybe some people would say it's the sort of thing that's supposed to get you into heaven. But it's like,
We should note that what counts as abstinent very much varies by culture
yeah,
and time period. Like in medieval or early modern Europe, a betrothal was seen as good as a marriage when it came to sexual acts.
yeah, and I've
Because
seen shotgun
because
like,
of the sheer amount of capital you needed to properly get married, couples would get betrothed and be betrothed for years before the proper marriage occurred.
yeah, and
So it wasn't seen as wrong to have sexual relations or children if you were betrothed. That was seen as, it was essentially a binding legal concept
yeah, it
in
was,
medieval Europe.
yeah, and up until that only changed rather recently. Like even in, I've seen, like, you know, I say the Puritans, but like that's a way bigger group and more complicated group than people think. But like Boston settlers in the 1600s, something like 1 in 3 wives were visibly pregnant when they got married because of that. Because they would get betrothed and they'd sleep together because they were effectively spouses, and eventually they would, you know,
Additional assignment received.
be already be showing the visible marks by the time they actually got around to being able to hold the ceremony. But
The thing I think most interesting about that is it was a recognized legal concept, so if you broke a betrothal, you could sue.
yeah, and
Which I believe was a very German thing to do, because we have records of German court cases about it.
yeah, that's that, like, I mean, kind of that. You're right. There's a lot of nuance there that I don't fully understand, and so I don't want to comment on it too much. But like, yeah,
As with every historical anecdote you hear here or anywhere else, there is a shitload of nuance and if or maybe or kind ofs
yeah,
baked into.
yeah. Like as a rule,
Like, do not cite us on a test, but absolutely use this as a way to further your own research into reputable sources.
and one of the guiding principles of historical research is that if someone tells you something simple, they're selling you something. You know?
Oh, absolutely. And usually what they're selling is ideological.
Yeah. Or either it's ideological or it's both ideological and economic, because those make
Oh, that's
surprisingly good
absolutely
fellows,
true.
bedfellows. But like, you know, but I was actually working around to a point with the purity and virginity thing. Is
Oh,
that,
go ahead.
Purity, whatever purity means to a culture, is usually whatever is the antidote or the counter agent to whatever the vengeful dead of the area is. So, and that's why silver has a lot of old association with purity, because among other things, it has mild antimicrobial properties. People were kind of recognize that without really knowing what to do with it. A lot of it is because it's a precious metal that was both precious and attractive and cheap enough that you could reasonably hope to see some of it in a small village. And it was something that was like both valuable and accessible. And there were all kinds of things around it that made silver a very potent symbol of purity, which is why you are supposed to shoot a werewolf with a silver bullet. And that, I think I mentioned this before too, it's why you are supposed to it's why vampires don't show up in photos, because traditionally there was the process used silver, and that was supposed to intercept their image and reveal them what they really were.
I want well, now you know what I want is I want a modern setting work of fantasy to integrate that, to say that yeah, you can photograph a vampire. That's kind of just a myth because they used to use silver in the process. That's what I want. I want someone to go through all these and say all these old myths and stuff, and then say, well, this doesn't work in the modern world anymore, so when I write my story,
yeah, I mean,
you can photograph vampires with a digital camera because it doesn't involve silver.
Yeah, there's a lot of wild and complicated shit around, different things that you could theoretically do to stave off the vengeful dead. But what happened with vampires is like we haven't even seen a vampire yet, so I don't want to get too into deep.
Oh no, we saw them. They were the creatures, the guys in all the clothing, so they don't get hit by the sun.
I mean, yeah, but we haven't. Have we fought with them yet? Like,
I shot a bunch of them, but they didn't really do any vampire things except for slinging blood magic at us.
Oh, yeah, I must have been just walking and talking. I missed it. But like,
don't worry, we're gonna fight some werewolves right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the wolves controlled by the werewolves and some actual werewolves.
Yeah. So, hey, it looks a lot of shit is a lot of holy symbols are.
It's a hollowed tree, so we're protecting. Yeah, there's a werewolf. Very stereotypical looking werewolf.
He's got. And I can't remember the old World of Darkness werewolf name. That's what it is. But like, originally werewolves were just people who turned into horrifying monsters at night and killed people. And rather than the modern, like a lot of that, I'm less clear on the history of modern werewolf culture than I am on vampire culture. Because
you'll have time. You have time to go over it. There's a lot of werewolves in this fucking 3-piece area series.
Yeah, there's a lot of this is not a small area. And I remember the quests in this area way more vividly than I remember the quests in the game. Like, I remember some of these characters in some of these areas. Like, I think they put a little too, they could have put more effort into integrating different parts of modern Egypt into, Egypt. Because as it is, like, it's you have the town where people live, and then you have the ancient Egyptians, and you have, other than that, you have characters. You don't have cultures or people who are derived from these cultures. And
do they do that much better in Transylvania?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of different Oh, wait. Why don't you remember Octavius?
Is he in Transylvania? It's
Yeah.
been. Well, I honestly don't, because it's been a very long time since I did Transylvania. The one I really remember from Transylvania is the Leninist gnome.
Yeah, I
And
remember
he
that
has,
guy.
like, he only has one mission, and he's like a local variant of the gnome myth, the household
Lachlan,
helper,
yeah.
field helper myth, and he's like wearing a Leninist outfit and talking about communism.
Everyone around him is just going, okay, that's nice, man.
I think it's endearing, you know, like
I mean,
the supernatural can absolutely be comrades.
I mean, though, I think it's. I'm sighing more because this is post-Soviet Europe, Eastern Europe, so they have
That is true.
plenty. He would not be getting any kind of positive reception if he was talking about that to, you know, any kind of communities that were tightly tied to the outside, anywhere outside of the specific region. Like,
Yeah, he'd be facing some pushback.
Yeah, I mean, they'd probably be like, from I don't know, it depends on person to person, obviously, but like, they would very few people would actually listen to him with any kind of seriousness.
I mean, especially given the sort of detritus the Soviets left in this
even in this area, there's a lot of Soviet detritus, and we will be interacting with that Soviet detritus at length.
Yeah, there's a lot of leftover Soviet secret projects in this area, including a very good dungeon that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, I still need to do the dungeons from Egypt. Even though they take 15 minutes, I've just been putting it off.
Yeah.
I finally unlocked the last unlockable quest on my main. So when it gets to the very end of this and we've done all the content, I will go over the unlockables on my main.
There you go. Yeah.
In one of them, you get a bazooka.
Yeah, that probably helps. Like,
And you meet that ancient, like over 100-year-old ass kicker lady. Dame whatever her name is.
Oh, Dame Tipple. I think. Or something. Yeah, God, where was I from Pause? I forgot where I was. What was I talking about?
Well, we'd already finished talking about werewolves and vampires, so
no, we hadn't.
Unless you had more.
Oh, I had plenty.
Unless
more
you had
for
finished.
vampires.
Oh, cool. Go ahead.
And when we actually find the local vampires, there'll be more I have to say, because they take a different tack with vampires here than most pop culture versions of vampires. That most pop culture vampires do.
Yes, they are very explicit in this that vampires are not descended from Dracula. Rather, vampire hunters are.
Yeah, and the connection. When we get to the Draculesti, I will be talking about.
Well, when we get to the Draculesti, you'll also have to talk about the Roma.
Yeah,
because the Draculesti are absolutely Roma.
Yeah, they are explicitly Roma, and also explicitly descendants of Vlad Tepes himself, which is complicated.
Yes, if you're not familiar with what the Roma are, it's not just the Italian name for Rome. It's also the proper name, as in the non-offensive one, for gypsies.
Yeah.
So if you ever meet someone who is one, they prefer to be called Roma rather than gypsies. I had my parents lived in Cyprus and would go visit Europe several years ago for my dad's job, and oh boy, those people, they're all nice and liberal and stuff, and then the moment you mention gypsies, oh boy, stuff comes out.
Yeah. It's
which is weird because you think, Americans have the stereotype of being very racist, but apparently that's like the one group of people we do not give any shit about is the Roma. Because there just aren't any.
Yeah,
there just aren't any here.
And, I mean, there are a few, but they're not like a thing. Look, I remember reading once that in the 1870s, The only piece of anti-Roma legislation that's ever been put before the U.S. Congress was put before Congress by a Southern senator who was talking about the same kind of expression you hear from any theoretically liberal, European. And another senator, after the guy sat down to do his presentation, he basically went, we all know you are basically substituting every time you use that word, you're substituting that in for black people. We know exactly what you're trying to do here. We know what the law that you're trying to slip past us and didn't go anywhere. It's but like, I'm gonna save it for the Draculeshi, because there's a lot going on with the Roma. There's a lot of stuff that people don't think about. But like, I want to talk.
We get a whole area that's nothing but Draculesti. So
yeah, there's plenty to cover. But I want to at least wrap up the vampire tale. Oh, we're in. Oh, are the werewolves?
This is the one I had trouble with. No, those were more forest wardens.
Okay.
I should perhaps ingest
no, this mission, I have to look up the walkthrough, as I have for several other of these mystery missions. Except the walkthrough is wrong, so I spend 15 minutes trying to get it to work before looking it up on my phone, finding an error message, someone complaining, and they're like, "Oh no, you have to do this," and it's not in the walkthrough.
Sensitive to pain. Not my own, other people's pain. People I know.
But there's a lot of, okay, so for this section you have to die stuff in this mission. Which is fun, because I like to imagine my character just putting his shotgun in his mouth in front of other people.
Yeah, that's gotta be a B thing. Either it's...
Who was it this time? Who fell? Every day another falls.
I don't want to interrupt this too much.
So many have succumbed to the vampires and to other darker things deep in our old forest. There is no safe place for any of us any longer. Not even from humans who ought to know the law.
First few days, I could barely stand up. There was death everywhere. People I've known my whole life. Villagers, farmers, my own family.
They are at rest now, Sophie. In the woods on the other side. There they run with the deer through the glades and soar with the birds into the clear blue sky.
Not everyone. Not all of them. Some deaths are incomplete. Some dead are restless and they rummage in my head. Like they're looking for something, pulling open drawers and closets. I feel them knocking about. There was much that happened down there, on the farms, when the vampires came. Horrible, horrible things. Death isn't the worst thing someone can do to you. Make sure you watch out for the dead as well as the undead when you're out there. The dead that walk are bothersome, but the dead that don't, they have stories to tell, and we need to listen.
So, yeah, that's...
Yeah, I botched this mission pretty hard. So, I apologize that the rest of the video is just this mission.
That's life. I can talk about pop culture vampires and why
there's
the vampires
There's the Leninist gnome right there, giving a speech. We'll probably do his mission next time. It's pretty straightforward, but I love the concept of a supernatural creature becoming a communist.
Man, that's
which is why I love the Anarchs in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
It's been that's a game like Planescape Torment, that great storyline based on a tabletop RPG that's let down by its mechanics. I think didn't they update it or release a new version or something?
There are several fan patches.
But like, no, like they made a whole new game, like just maybe this or last year, like a Bloodline sequel or something.
Not strictly a sequel, but there have been several several Vampire the Masquerade related content recently. And they're still working on Bloodlines 2, but that's in like development hell at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They got from what I understand, they got the guy who made the original Bloodlines, and then they fucked around so much that the people who owned the IP came in and said, "What the fuck are you doing?" Fired everyone and started over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, happens.
So it's apparently as much of a shit show now as it was when they were originally developing Bloodlines. So,
which is just that sounds about right. God, fucking, I was.
But we all know who's really behind it, which is oh god,
Fucking...
I was gonna make a Vampire the Masquerade joke, but I've forgotten the name of the correct group.
Fucking, it's something.
There's like 10 million special interest
so many
groups
of those
in Vampire.
Fucking Kindred of the East and Bunyips.
Oh
and
god,
fucking...
Kindred of the East. Jesus.
And they actually show
the
up.
The only thing worse. I know, but they're like treated good in Bloodlines as opposed to their source book.
God.
I mean, the funniest thing for me will forever be the Werewolf Africa book, which is just, oh my god.
Yeah, God, there's a lot of stupid shit out there. And when it comes to, like, fucking Vampire. It is astonishing.
I mean, we've mentioned several times your review of the Holocaust book for Geist.
Yeah. God.
Which is like, has a foreword from a rabbi who's like, this is really well done, but did not need to exist.
Okay, well, why did you even bother?
Because otherwise people would just keep asking us the question.
I don't think that question is as obvious as you or those people thought it was. I do not think... Like, when I think about having a good time playing with my friends and being ghosts, I don't think about the fucking Holocaust. That's not what comes first to my mind. I don't know.
When someone makes a game about the afterlife, and the nature of your death shapes the entirety of, how you play, someone is going to ask that question. Because it is such a huge tragedy.
It comes.
I mean, I would have a similar question.
The issue is not would, but should. Like
that's absolutely fair. Like they should not have made that. But I'm just saying that question would get asked, and the answer to that question is to ignore it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Put out a book you're charging money. If you're gonna do anything, charge money for it and then give the money to charity. Like don't make a profit on that book.
Yeah, good God. Ugh.
I mean, I would have the same question about any other horrific tragedy in Geist. Like, what happened to the Africans who died in the slave ships? Like, do they get special powers if you get possessed by one?
The answer is, don't ask that question. That's a fucking awful
exactly.
question.
Do not let that question be answered. That is the answer to those sorts of questions.
Look, if you are a part of that group and you have interesting way of handling it, that is different. If you're just
the actual publisher, if you're the actual publisher, do not touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Because you will have the sort of people who played werewolf who played vampire in the 90s and treat it in exactly all the terrible ways you would expect.
I mean, the people who played vampire in the 90s, oh my god, you've been to a vampire LARP, haven't you?
Yep.
Yeah, you know exactly what those people are like.
Oh, okay. No, I have not been to a vampire LARP. I've been to a mage LARP, and that was not bad. Like, it could have been it was like maybe I wouldn't say fun, but it was at least functioned. But like, God, fucking kind of political shit that happens in vampire LARPs is just terrifying.
I really need some context. Do you mean intergroup politics or literal politics?
Literal politics, and I'm not talking about like national politics, but I mean there are you have it takes an actual dedicated infrastructure group to run like a vampire LARP. So like I mentioned that I wasn't just involved in this LARP. I was friends with a lot of people who were actually running it, and I just showed up a couple times, and I had sort of fun, and then I got bored and moved on. But they were like involved in making sure it was functioning, and the level of political wrangling behind the scenes, the level of ego clash, the level of horrible fucking bullshit people were doing to each other over live action roleplay of Vampire, not even Vampire not the Masquerade, whatever the Requiem, was just astonishing. It was just, why would you do, why, they could not stop taking it seriously. They could not stop taking what people could not move on beyond what the characters were saying to each other. And it was just, it was a nightmare, and I understand that's actually kind of common. That happens a lot in vampire LARPs, where interpersonal politics become major issues.
Is that not on brand for what Vampire claims to depict?
I mean, it absolutely is, but it doesn't make it any more fun for people who have to suffer or who.
I mean, what you need to understand is
complaining.
If Vampire the Masquerade is real, you're just doing that for the rest of eternity. It's like I said the first time I heard that if you're a vampire, you can no longer eat food. Like, it tastes like ashes in your mouth. I was like, well, immediately I just walk into the sunlight. Like, fuck that.
Yeah. God, no wonder.
I imagine you lose 90% of new converts to suicide because they're like, wait, I can't fuck and I can't eat.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
this blood better be rad, dude.
Well, in fairness, maybe canonically they can't fuck, but that has long been forgotten.
Oh yes, oh yes. The LARPers do not care about that.
That's not something. That's not thing anybody involved with Vampire the Masquerade has ever cared about. Or unless they've used it to beat somebody else they didn't like over the head with it. Vampire, like, it's like I obligatory disclaimer. It's entirely possible to have a fun game of Vampire. It's entirely possible to be the sort of person who enjoys that because it's just like low stakes wrangling. It's entirely possible to run that in a way that just gets completely on brand vicious and everyone goes home happy because that's what they came for. But it's so hard to do it, and the people who run those things are not the people who know how to do it. It's fucking that shit.
I mean, the only one I've ever played is Mage, and that was like one session.
Yeah, I was in a Mage LARP. God, what was it? And this is all New World of Darkness. I've had some, and I knew people who ran Vampire. I knew people who ran the Vampire and Mage LARPs. And
when I was in college, we had an annual zombie thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kids would get Nerf guns, and if you couldn't get a Nerf gun, you'd get balled up socks. And some people would be like, initially it was one person was the zombie, and essentially, as you're going about your daily business, going to class and learning, if you see someone who's the zombie, you run to one of the safe zones. If you are the zombie, you chase and try to tag this person. So, for like 2 months across campus, it was like a campus-wide game of tag. And people were into it. Like, they were seriously modding these Nerf guns to fire faster and farther than normal.
I do like that.
I never participated because I wasn't about to buy a Nerf gun and I didn't really care. But they seemed like they had fun.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing people often enjoy. Just as long as you have ground rules, so that.
Oh, we did. We did, or at least they did. I mean, I never participated. The thing I remember most is we actually had a Satanist in my dorm room. Not my dorm room, but rather the dorms. Mm-hmm. So if you... And not like a classical Satanist, like a LaVey Satanist, where it's just libertarianism with Satanist trappings.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, that dude was an asshole.
Yeah.
Not because he was a Satanist, because he was a LaVey Satanist.
Yeah, he wasn't he wasn't an asshole because he was a Satanist. He was a Satanist because he was an asshole.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, that it's like yeah, you with people like that, it's like if you never want to spend any period of time in close proximity to an objectivist if you can help it, because unless you are also an objectivist, just because those people are fucking intolerable. It like their whole belief system is like it's
toxic.
It is an attempt to make selfishness a positive force for society, which means you just have to be in close proximity to somebody who thinks them being selfish is a moral good, and that doesn't make for fun conversation most of the time.
Yeah, I derp around here because I've forgotten I have to kill myself and then talk to their spirits.
Pretty grody. Lots of body parts, but then, you know... God, fucking... Where was I with the fucking vampires? I don't know.
We got talking about Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah.
Lost.
You got lost in the sauce.
You'll have more time to talk about... more time to talk about vampires. There's like nothing but vampires and werewolves here.
Yeah, this is... God. Like, I mean, next time I'm probably going to end up talking about... If we're doing the Blodgeny and we're doing... It's going to be that and communism. I'm going to be talking about the Soviet Union. And because that is a wild subject that people don't understand as well, nearly as much as they should, given just how much of the world's surface was ultimately influenced by it. But, like,
what, the Soviet Union or the Blodgeny?
The Soviet Union. Yeah, not the Blodgeny. I mean, maybe they'd like I can't think of a good pun of Marxist-Leninist and gnome, but just make one up for yourselves and put that in there. That guy is probably wishes he was that important, but he isn't.
You know, I just think it's neat because so often in fiction where it deals with both the supernatural and the Soviet Union, it portrays the Soviet Union as being, because it was anti-theistic, as also being anti-supernatural.
And no, I mean, it kind of was, but also more out of convenience than out of some kind of like deep thing. This is the Soviet Union. This is the country that had special provisions for the Orthodox Church and kept it alive and wealthy through the whole of the Soviet period. Like, there were ways around that. And granted that they did it by suborning it, but that's another issue. God, fucking...
Did I ever tell you about the weirdest person I know? I knew, rather. They were a fellow poster on Something Awful.
Oh, do tell.
Okay, so let's start this. Female to male trans, monarchist, Orthodox old believer.
That's very idiosyncratic.
They no longer post on Something Awful because they claim that communists kept harassing them.
Yeah, that's a very specific belief system. Like, I don't know what
you're struggling to think how that fits together, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I can get it's like I can see how it fit together just because of personal conviction, but I think it just makes me think of gay Republicans and how
exactly.
Like, I know
exactly.
Like, I can see somebody's sexuality doesn't dictate their political beliefs, but there does come a point where you have to start and sit down and think to yourself, I may agree with these people, but they also hate me more than the other guys do, and want me to either die horribly or not exist in the first place. So, what do we do? God. freaking. Yeah, I'm not gonna talk. Let's not talk about politics because that's a fertile vein of shit to talk about.
Yet you wanted to talk about the Soviet Union in the next video.
The Soviet Union's been dead for 30 years.
It's not dead in my heart, okay?
Just seeing Brett.
No, but
I'm not-
seriously, you're gonna get we're gonna get hate mail for talking about communism. Both from people who think we're too soft on it and people who think we're too hard on it.
Yeah, it raises tempers. People have many
Oh, it
very
very much
powerful
does.
opinions on various things. Boy.
I say this as someone whose political ideology was influenced by the Hearts of Iron 4 mod. Oh god, what was it?
That's a terrible thing to admit in front of the internet, my man.
I know. But I didn't know what syndicalism was until I played
right.
that one Hearts of Iron mod, and I looked
And
it up, and I was
yeah,
like, wow, this
To be
makes sense. Yeah, I like this.
yeah, to be fair, you could have picked way worse shit than syndicalism.
I mean, I like this. I like unions and cooperation, so...
Yeah, it's
It pretty much made... Okay, here's where the problem is. I have a step to do before I can accuse this guy. The walkthrough I have pulled up does not mention that step. So most of the rest of this video of the next 9 minutes is me just standing here trying to emote at this guy to get him to turn angry.
God. It's
not even a design problem. It's literally a walkthrough problem.
sometimes people fuck up, and I bet that site either no longer updates or it's
Oh, it absolutely no longer updates.
Yeah.
Like, do not even think for a second that anyone is updating anything to do with this game.
like, give me a second. I need to see I need to check something awful quick. Last fanfiction posted. Okay, the last fanfiction posted of the Secret World was posted 2 days ago, but the one before, but that's a crossover, and so is the other one. So the last, let's see, you're seeing about one piece of fanfiction every 2 or 3 months. That's pretty dead for something that's still on air.
What's the crossover with?
A billion things. There was one with Assassin's Creed, and there was one with like a bunch of different horror properties.
I mean, both those fit the aesthetic.
They absolutely do. And it's funny how they fit very different parts of the aesthetic, but they do both fit the aesthetic really well. You can absolutely though of course, given the Templars like in Assassin's Creed, the Templars in the Secret World are really different.
Yeah, the Assassin's Creed Templars are huge, horrible assholes.
They're basically
We're just kind of assholes.
Yeah, we're just the least assholes out of
and we're still not as much as assholes as the Templars from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, like, oh god.
I don't think anyone in the Secret World is. Like, even the Illuminati isn't as bad as those guys.
Yeah, the Illuminati aren't ideologically predisposed to try and extinguish your will or whatever the fuck they were doing. Like, I mean, the modern Illuminati aren't ideologically disposed towards basically anything, other than just
except making money.
Power. Yeah, getting power and money, and also supporting their super secret artificial intelligence, whatever the fuck it is. So, I don't know, like, don't they have an artificial intelligence that calls up the player to yell at you occasionally?
I've never played Illuminati. I've only ever played Templar, so... Now, normally that would be a question for the thread, but I have been permabanned from something awful, so...
Yeah, that happens. They do hit the ban button. But yeah, Secret World. I gotta look that up just to see. Frickin' find whatever it is. The Pyramidion, yes. Oh, he talks to you in a monotone, spouts memes. Perfect. Oh, and he pronounces common typos, just as is.
Yep. I'm so sorry for this. Like halfway through this, I was like, I should stop this recording and record it separately. But then I realized, but then there would be a separate. I'd have to edit some stuff and do separate recordings and separate commentaries, and it's just not worth it. Yeah, I'm trying everything, but I have short-circuited myself because I didn't know I had to do one thing, which is type in a license plate number based on the hints we got from the ghosts. VL159. At this point, I think at some point I pick up my phone and just...
Yeah, you just give up. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet. Sometimes that's life.
Yeah, I think it's what I'm doing here. Yeah, I've got it now.
Goodbye.
There we go.
Hello.
So this is the mission, one of the missions you were talking about, where you have to actually know or translate Romanian.
Oh. God, that was a specific thing to ask of an MMO player. Ugh, God. I mean, granted, you can probably get the gist of it through Google Translate, but to do that, you have to like write the shit all out, or I don't know Romanian, or just go online and look for the walkthrough. I get the impression that at this point in the game, they're kind of assuming that people are looking at the walkthrough already. Like, a lot of this is just, oh hey, here's a neat thing we're doing. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just Google it. I need to talk about the translating to Saxons. That's another story. Yeah, that was a very big topic switch, but whatever. Like, yeah, we're actually rather close to the end of the video too, so I couldn't even get started on that if I wanted to.
But yeah, we just have to fight one more enemy and find a body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the overall moral of this mission is do not get possessed by a revenant.
It's generally a good idea.
There we go. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching.
And see you all later.